All right, thanks everyone for bearing with us for just a moment while I got things finished up. Once again, welcome to today's presentation. We're going to be talking about an introduction to SEO best practices and how you can drive traffic to your website. My name is Jordan Russell. I'm the SEO manager here at RealPro Systems, and I'm joined today by Tiffany Telfer, our marketing manager. And she's going to be assisting with some of the questions and things, so if you do have any questions as we go through the presentation, feel free to type them into the question box, and she'll answer them as we go along if there's an answer readily available, or otherwise she'll save those for the question and answer section at the end of the presentation. One thing I do want to mention is we are recording the presentation, so it will be available later on if you missed something and you just want to view it again, or if you have to leave early. And also, some of the information we're talking about might be a little bit technical, more so than maybe you're really comfortable with. And so that's another reason that recording might be really helpful for you, just in case you kind of miss something. And once again, if it is over your head and you have a question about it, feel free to type that into the question box. With that, I'd like to get going. Just a brief overview about who we are here. RealPro Systems is one of the leading providers of real estate website systems, and we provide an entire real estate website system that works with you no matter where you're at in your real estate business. So if you're a brand new agent or if you're a seasoned team of veterans, our system scales to be where you're at and work with you. And also the presentation today is useful information whether you're not a client of ours already or if you're already a RealPro Systems client. There's going to be a lot of great information either way, and so don't feel like it's something you might miss out on. So getting into things, I just want to touch briefly on what is SEO. It's likely a buzzword that you hear quite a bit, especially when it pertains to your website or your online presence. SEO stands for Search Engine Optimization, and it's basically the practice of managing your website in a way that promotes Google and Bing and other search engines to show it in the search results. It's really not a series of tactics that allows you to game the system. The search engines have become much more sophisticated over the years, and they really crack down on the ability to game the system. And so it's really a series of earnest things that you're going to do on your site to promote the engines to send visitors to your site. Basically, they're looking to create the best user experience possible for someone that's on the search engine, and they want to connect them with the most relevant content and relevant sites that exist out there. So you might be asking yourself, why do I need SEO? You might have heard the saying, if you build it, they will come. Unfortunately, that's not so true anymore. About 15 to 20 years ago, when the internet was still a very new thing to most people, it was more likely than not that if you had a website, you might be the only person in your area doing that, and you might get matched up more readily. The fact of the matter is now the internet is massive, and there's so much information out there. Simply having a website doesn't really cut it. You do have to promote it in some way. And so including SEO practices on your site is a great way to promote that through the search engines, really demonstrating that it's an authoritative site and warrants being shown in the search results for whatever the search may be. Another thing about SEO is it doesn't necessarily mean free traffic to your site. Oftentimes in online marketing, SEO is referred to as natural traffic, but the truth is it's traffic that does have to be worked for. So while there might not be a specific price tag that's assigned to it, kind of like if you're doing pay-per-click marketing, there's a very definitive cost per click for everyone that goes to your site. SEO is the real costs there are the time it takes to put things together, or if you're hiring somebody to work on it, whether they're creating content or making optimizations. There are definitely costs there. And it does, as I mentioned, as part of that cost and that opportunity there, it is a matter of putting in a specific effort, whether it's working on quality content, maximizing your site design, working on your linking strategy, etc. And we're going to go over some of those things here. So, as I was mentioning, there's a series of SEO best practices that are really kind of key to maximizing the time that you're spending, or even the money if you're having people help work on it. So some of the things we're going to be talking about today are keyword research, content, the site architecture, or rather the content architecture, on-page optimization, some of the technical settings that we'll be working on, link building, and then submitting to the engines. So the first part of that is really keyword research. And if you're familiar with online marketing at all, especially your website marketing, we understand that keywords are a big part of that because people are entering in keywords to the search engine or a search query. And so a big goal has always been to rank well for those particular keywords that someone might be searching for. So the first thing we want to look at is avoiding some of the mistakes that might exist out there. And those include things like choosing keywords that are too broad, keywords with too much competition, keywords that don't drive enough traffic, a keyword that doesn't convert. And by conversion, I mean someone that might turn into a lead or whatever the metric for their site might be. Most of the time when we talk about that, we are thinking about a potential customer. And then also trying to rank for just a single keyword at a time. There's kind of other ways that we can look at that. And so as an alternative to that, I would recommend considering keyword themes. And this really has to do more with multiple theme keywords. They tend to be more specific. They are kind of medium volume, and they have a kind of a lower to medium competition. So it changes things a little bit, and I'll go a little bit more into detail here. So with the keyword theme, what I'm really talking about is considering something like traditionally you might think that you want to rank well for a term like real estate or maybe your city real estate like Eugene real estate. And those tend to be very highly competitive terms, and if you do a search on those, you'll probably notice that the first page in the search results are going to be dominated by major players in the game, the Trulias, the Zillows, Realtor.com, and then probably the larger brokerage offices. Those that have, their sole business is just existing online, and they have a lot more weight when it comes to those kind of more general terms. And so, as part of that keyword theme, what I would recommend is instead looking at long tail terms, and those are the kind of the more in-depth searches that might have something more to do with your area. And that has to do with a lot of times their neighborhoods or particular developments, whatever the case may be. And so we might be looking at, in Eugene we've got several neighborhoods. Someone might be looking for the Gillum area, and so they would say, or North Gillum, they'd say, North Gillum, Eugene, Oregon real estate or something. And so we would really target that particular string rather than just looking at Eugene. But then if we were looking at Eugene, another way to think of the keyword theme is including lots of different terms that relate to that in the content itself. And so we might consider things like Eugene real estate, homes for sale in Eugene, relocating Eugene, Eugene schools, condos in Eugene, things like that. Not that we're trying to stuff the term Eugene, but we're trying to really focus on a lot of the overall ideas and things that people would be looking for. And we're going to look at crafting a strong piece of content that really addresses a lot of those things. That way we're not spreading ourselves too thin when we're actually putting things onto the site. So with that, we're talking about content. One of the big keys is creating content that adds value. And that's not actually the add value for the search engines as much as it's value for real users, because the ultimate goal that even Google and Bing has is connecting people, as I mentioned, to the most relevant content for what they're searching for. And because they're looking to improve the user experience, it's something that we really need to be looking at when we're putting content onto our sites. And so as I started to go with our keyword themes, I want you to think of taking your keyword theme further. And so it's not just a matter of putting those words on the page, but putting those ideas into a piece of content that really addresses what people might be looking for. So if somebody's looking for information about living in Eugene or real estate in Eugene, we want to talk about what that experience is like or what people might be looking for when it comes to Eugene real estate. And so that's where we start using all of those different terms in a single piece of content. So we're talking about schools, we're talking about the restaurants, the parks, all the different things that kind of have to do with what it means to live in a particular community. And so that's a big piece of how you should craft your content. And as I already mentioned, we want to keep our human site visitors in mind. That's who we're really creating the content for. One of the big things I'd like to drive home is that you should be creating content that positions you as the local expert. So when somebody comes to your site, they can say, wow, this person really knows, or this team really knows what's going on. They know the area, they know the subdivisions, they know why this is somewhere I should live. It's a way that you can potentially differentiate yourself from your competitors. But as I mentioned before, it's that relevant content that Google's looking for with the searcher's intent in mind. And then along with the content, we want to look at the content depth, and that really refers to the information that's on the page. Because your website is not a single page, it's not a web page, it's a website. And so it's a collection of pages, and we want to look at how we can create multiple pages that really address that. And so it's not just about having that single page about Eugene, but you might have pages that have to do with your neighboring areas. Or if there's just so much information about one aspect of your community, you might create another page for that. It's not something that has a particular count to it, but you want to make sure that you're including enough content on your site that really shows that you're the local expert. And the last part of this with the content really is just making sure that you consider the various forms of content. The search engines are going to be looking at all the different information out there, and beyond the search engines, another piece we'll talk about in a little bit is having other people link to your content. And one of the great ways of doing that is considering what the information on your site is. And so a lot of that is going to be the actual pages you create. Take the shape of blog posts that you're putting up, the images that you include if you've got great pictures. The search engines are taking into account all of those different parts. And then finally, another great way to include a lot of useful content on your page without even as much work from yourself is to leverage an IDX system. IDX systems are great because they add a lot of unique content to your page, and it creates additional value for the users because if somebody's searching for real estate, obviously they want to see real estate listings, so you want to have that there. But a great integrated system is going to allow your site to get credit for that additional content that they're providing. And then with the system that we use with our sites, IDX Broker, you're actually able to leverage their saved links and actually create very specific, unique information pages that include search results. So it's just a great way to really take one content page a lot further. And so this kind of lends into the next part, which I would really the architecture of the content, and I would encourage you to consider the idea of content hubs. And this kind of takes the idea I was mentioning before about having your in-depth content, and it kind of takes it further and it structures it. So as I mentioned, you're probably not going to specifically, have just a page on Eugene, but you might have pages about some of the neighboring areas. So here, when we're in Eugene, we're in Lane County, and so we have neighboring towns like Springfield and Coburg and Florence and Walterville and places like that. So what we might do is actually have a unique content page for each of those different points of interest. And so we're talking about each one of those individually, but when to really maximize how the search engines are going to be looking at this, we want to make sure that those pages are working together because they are related things. And so when we're creating that content, we actually want to look at how we can link between those. And so that doesn't always mean, I don't mean just having that included in your menu. That's one way that search engines and people are going to get to those different pages. But if there's logical connections between the content, link to those other pages when you write that page. So one of the things I might talk about in Eugene is that our major hospital system is located next door in Springfield. And so that being a major employer in the area, I might mention that it's in Springfield, and when I do that, I can link to that Springfield page, and vice versa. When I'm talking about Springfield, one of the major draws to the area is the University of Oregon, which is located in Eugene, so I would link back to that page, and so on. So it's about looking at how that information plays together, and it's something that somebody might want to know about, but you're also using it to really play those pages off of each other. And the search engines, what they'll end up doing is they see those links on the page, they'll go to the next page, and then they start to establish that that's information and content that you've added to your site that does work together. And so then to take that a little bit further, the content hubs aren't just horizontal where they would relate to the neighboring areas. It can actually relate to the subpoints, and so this, on the graphic on the left side, I've got Eugene real estate, and then that's linking to different pages about Eugene condos, single-family residential, acreage. Now, those are just examples of property searches, but I might have a page that talks just about the schools in Eugene, maybe the public and private schools that people will be looking for, golf courses in Eugene, hiking trails, things like that. And so those would actually then possibly link together on their horizontal plane, but they're also linking back to that main Eugene real estate page. And so it's just a big way to kind of play some of that information off of each other to make sure that you're providing a variety of information that's available there for your potential site visitors. And then on the right-hand side, just another graphic of how that kind of keeps growing, and basically that pyramid of content kind of just keeps expanding. So one of the really big key parts that I do want to talk about today, and this is where if you're not really familiar or maybe as web savvy as could get a little technical, is talking about some of the on-page optimization and including the different SEO elements on your pages. So some of those elements we're going to talk about are the URL, the page title, the meta description, the meta keywords, the H1, H2, and H3 tags, which also stand for the header or heading tags. So it's heading 1, heading 2, and heading 3, etc. We'll talk about image alternate text and bold text as well. So the first part I want to mention is the title. And the title is going to show up typically in two places. When you're in your browser, you can see it on the tab that you're on. It says what page you're on. In this case, my example shows Eugene Real Estate, and then the pipe character, sample real estate team. But it also shows it in the search results. So this is actually one of your opportunities to specifically tell the search engine what your page is about. And what I would always recommend doing here is it's fine to include a piece of marketing text here, kind of the way I've got the sample real estate team, but you want to include that after the description of what the page is. So I've got Eugene Real Estate, sample real estate team. The part that's on the right, or excuse me, on the left is always kind of the most important part. It shows up first, and that's what the page really focuses on. One of the things I do want to mention about the title is historically, the rule of thumb was to limit your titles to about 70 characters long. That was kind of the cutoff point for what Google and Bing would show in their search results. But Google has changed some of the formatting of the results page, and the formatting is now specific to the search that somebody does, and so it actually reduced the number of characters that will display. And so the new standard kind of rule of thumb, I would say, is to have that be around 57 or 58 characters. Otherwise, your title might get truncated, and then it might not show everything that it needs to, especially if you have a longer subject for the page. You want to make sure that you're keeping that very specific so you're not losing anything. A great tool that exists, a company called Moz.com put out, and you can use this Google link that I've included here, is a tool that basically lets you preview what that might look like, so you're not having to wait until Google indexes the page and shows it in the results before you know how it's going to appear. You can actually sample that. I've got a couple screenshots of that just so you can see that. So here my full title shows Downtown Eugene Real Estate from the sample real estate team. And then below it, it just shows how traditionally that would show up in the blue text on Google's page. And everything displays, and that's great. But then if the next picture here, if somebody searched for Eugene Real Estate and my page displayed, my title, you'll see that actually Eugene Real Estate and even the term real estate have been bolded in that title text, which actually made it longer, not longer in characters, but the actual the size of the characters increased, so it cut that off. And so you'll see team was removed from the end, and they included the ellipses at the end. And so we want to consider showing those titles in a different way so that they don't cut that off. So my next example, I've just used Downtown Eugene Real Estate, and now you can see that they did not get cut off for that search for Eugene Real Estate. And you can see how the text was bolded there. The next part I want to talk about is quite important as well, is the URL. And I'm not talking as much about your domain, the actual location of your site, but everything basically after the .com and how it relates to your pages. And basically what I would encourage you to do is to try to keep the URLs shorter, again, for almost the same reason as the title, so they're not being truncated. But also so that when somebody sees the URL in the results, or even if somebody was sharing it, but especially for the SEO purpose of showing it in the results, it's very clear to the search engine and to the end user, the person searching on Google, what the page is about. So in my example here, my page is about Eugene Real Estate, and my URL is .com/Eugene-real-estate. It's very straightforward. It's to the point. It makes it very clear that that page is about Eugene Real Estate. The next piece is the description or the meta description, as it's often referred. And this part is a little bit different in that it doesn't display on your website at all. It's part of the code that the search engines pick up, but it's actually not located on a part that you would actually somebody would see on your page. It also actually doesn't carry any weight as far as how the page is ranked in the search engine. This exists really more as a marketing piece that you're able to use, where you're getting about 170 characters to really describe what the page is about, and try to include some kind of call to action that makes sure that people really understand what they might get out of the page. Why should they click through here? And so it's really important to include this, because if you don't, the search engines will typically just pick some of the text at random off your page, or not necessarily random. They'll try to match the searcher's intent at best, or try to make their decision about what the page is about. But the best way to control this and make sure that you're giving the end user the most appropriate look at what your page is to enter a description and make it to the point, and be descriptive of that page. You don't want to just include some kind of boilerplate text that you put on every single page. You want to make sure that's specific to this exact page. Looking a little bit further down the page, we'll talk about some of the other elements. And so this is really getting into the content of the page and what you're able to affect. The first part is the H1 tag, or the heading 1 tag. This is really one of the biggest cues, other than the URL and the title, of what the page is about. And depending on the website that you're on, it can display in different ways. A lot of times the H1 text is the largest text on the page. In this particular example, it's actually formatted to be smaller than the next heading. but you'll see we included it. It says Eugene Real Estate and Information. And so that's really saying that this whole page is about Eugene Real Estate and Information. The next is the heading 2. Basically, it's a hierarchical order where the heading 1 is the most important, heading 2 is the second, heading 3 is the, and so on. It moves along like that. In this case, the heading 2 has been formatted to be bigger than the H1, and it's actually the same text. That's not necessarily any kind of an issue. It's just the preference here. It's kind of a second cue about what the page is about. It could be the same as the H1. It could be different. It just depends. The next piece is the H3. And what I will typically do when I'm creating content pieces is to use the H3 to describe subpoints within the page. And so the H1 and the H2 have really talked about how this page is about Eugene Real Estate Information. But the H3 really marks out those subpoints. So it's saying that this section here is about shopping and dining, the next is about parks and recreation, the next about living. It's kind of breaking up the page and saying, yeah, everything's about Eugene, but these are some of the subpoints below it. Using bold text on the page is another way to give cues to the engine about what the page is about, as well as to the end user, because they'll see that bold text. In this case, the text here I've got bold is Eugene Real Estate for Sale. You might also have some of those different keyword themes that we talked about included within your text. So if yes, our page here is about Eugene Real Estate, but if one of the other terms that we were kind of thinking was important was homes for sale in Eugene, and you use that phrase in your text somewhere, you might bold that text just to kind of call that out as, hey, this is kind of important and this is part of what the page is about as well. And then the next part is the image alternate text or alt text. And again, this is one of those things you can't see on the page, but anytime you include an image, this is something you are able to include. And so down in the right-hand corner, I have a picture of the skyline here in Eugene. And it's great. The picture's there. It makes sense to the users that go to the page, but the search engines themselves actually can't see what that image is. And so the image alternate text is a way that we're actually able to describe what the image is. It actually was originally created as an accessibility feature for visually impaired. That way, if they were using a reader that would actually read the page out loud, it would describe the page to them. But in that same way, because search engines can't see it, they use it as a cue about what the image is about. And so I would say that it's important to be descriptive of what the image is, but don't try to really spam the page or include too much information. Like don't try to use your keyword over and over again in that text. So I might say skyline of Eugene Real Estate or Eugene Real Estate skyline. It's honest about what it is. It's descriptive, and it shouldn't cause any issues for you. The next part that I alluded to a little bit earlier was the practice of link building. And I'm not going to go really in depth here because this is kind of a bigger thing all on its own. But link building is essentially the idea of having other sites linking to your own website, and in the same way that you might link to other people's website. And again, if you're familiar with search marketing at all, online marketing, you've probably heard about link building in some way, and there's been lots of talk about it because Google's been making a lot of algorithmic changes that affect the value of some of the links that people have. But I do want to say it's still an essential piece of SEO, and it's something that you need to do. And so what I would encourage you to do when you're considering link building, as I mentioned, it's getting other people to link to your website or kind of having those others there. A great way to think about it is like when you write a research paper when you're in school, the references that you would use, your paper basically carried more weight if you use more authoritative research. And so it kind of backs up what's on your page. If other more authoritative sites on the internet are linking to your site, it will tend to help. Basically, some of the SEO value that they've created is applying them to your site. What I would really caution you against is if anyone offers you some kind of link building scheme, some kind of index, and it's something that you're going to pay for, like if they say, we'll include you on 20 sites if you pay us this amount of money, I would say avoid those types of opportunities. Those are becoming devalued very quickly through Google's changes. But instead, what I would encourage you to do is try to build links as an extension of your real relationships, the things that you're already doing with your business. If you have people that you're working with on a regular basis, and they have websites as well, whether maybe it's you're working with a particular title team or title company or a group of contractors, if you're involved in a local fraternal organization, something like that. If they've got a website and those are groups that you're actively involved with or do business with, you might ask them if they would be willing to link to your website as well. It's really not much different than getting a referral from somebody. It's just having other people that exist out there, other sites, linking to your own site. And then another really important part of what you can do to maximize the SEO on your site is to submit your site directly to the search engines. Both Google and Bing offer what they call webmaster tools, and these are really great features that basically allow you to submit your website's information directly to them. Basically, it's giving them a roadmap of what content exists on your site so that they can go and pick up that information very quickly. Whereas if you didn't put this in, they would actually have to just kind of happen upon your site, and then as their crawling process went through, they would just hit all of the different links on your page and hopefully get all of your content. This is great because it's basically your way of saying, hey Google, hey Bing, I've got this information, please put it on your search index. And so I've included the links here for both of these. Like I said, they're both called them webmaster tools. If you go on to Google or Bing and just search for webmaster tools or Google webmaster tools, Bing webmaster tools, you're going to find them, and you're able to go on and set up an account using your Google or Bing accounts that you might already have. Basically, you'll just go out there and set those up, and then you'll submit what's called a sitemap. And as I was mentioning, the sitemap is kind of that roadmap of what your site looks like. And for anyone that has a Real Pro Systems site, this link that I just put up is kind of an example of what that sitemap would look like. It's after the .com, so it's .com/sitemap, all one word. And so once you have that Webmaster Tools account set up, then you can submit the sitemap, and so whatever your domain might be. And then with all of that, the big part as well is considering the implementation and developing a strategy that works for you. As I mentioned, there's a lot of different things that you can do, but you want to be realistic about what you have time for or you have the resources for, and how you can do that on your site. If you're just starting out, you might want to focus on putting the great content on your site. And if you maybe serve an area with 5 different cities or something, you might just say, hey, what are the most important ones to my business? What am I most likely to gain success from? And start there and kind of work your way down so that you're getting those areas covered that are most important to you, and then you kind of work from there. Again, focus on, or let's see, excuse me. With that content, as you're kind of putting that strategy together, like I said, you want to make sure that you're positioning yourself as that local expert. So when you're putting that content together, think about the things that you know about your community. What do you know that other people might not be sharing that really say, man, this is a great place to live? What makes it so great? Is it schools? Is it just the sense of neighborhood and community that the neighbors share? whatever the case may be, include that type of information. And then if you're trying to think of different content or different things to share on your site, think about the types of things that your clients might ask you. If you're out on a showing and somebody is asking you about a particular neighborhood, think about writing a community page about that, including some of those things they're asking you about, or maybe a blog post. Chances are, if one of your clients is asking you some of those things, other people are going to have some of those same questions too. And so that's a great, easy way to include or to create original content for your site.
Jordan, can I interrupt for a minute? Everybody, this is Tiffany. I had a question that I wanted to bring up that a user has asked. And the question is, what about creating a link from other realtor friends that are in the same region but they don't compete? Is that something that would be helpful?
Yeah, I think that would be fine as well. Certainly, if you have colleagues that you're maybe not directly competing with, I think that sharing that type of link would be worthwhile. It's a lot of times referred to as a reciprocal link type situation where maybe you'd say, hey, we're both kind of serving the same area, but we're not competing against each other. Let's share each other's site links with each other, which is fine, because if it's something that you're not typically going to serve, I mean, especially if you're in a big metro area and you're on the east side and they're on the west side, and it's just not really you're going to work against each other, you might say, hey, this is the type of person that you should go talk to because they're my personal recommendation for that expert over there. The same kind of thing, if you're working with, or if you've got friends, realtor friends outside of the area, if we're in Eugene and somebody's in Portland, I'm not going to be the realtor that's going to be able to serve them well, so I would say, hey, this is the person you should talk to up there. So yeah, I think by all means, especially when it's not a competition situation, those would be great people to bounce things off of. And again, especially if they've been very successful with their web presence, like I mentioned, other websites that refer back to your site, if they are a successful website, as far as the search engines you're seeing, they'll actually give you some of that credit as well. So that's definitely a great way to kind of do things.
Just as a quick follow-up, what about linking to the self-site? So for our clients that have self-sites for home search or automated CMA, what about linking to those? Would those help their overall Realtor System site traffic?
For linking to those sites, it's not going to hurt anything. I would say that part of that is going to be just make sure that people get to those pages, because those pages do exist for lead capture. And so if within your content that you're creating, there's an appropriate time that it kind of leads into trying to provide people with more information, I would say those are great times to link to those pages. As your site's SEO reputation kind of builds, it might encourage more it might encourage those pages to show up higher in the results as well. But I would say that the linking from your site to your stealth page isn't in itself going to necessarily boost your main site. But I think it definitely, as far as a business generation kind of tactic, is still worthwhile to do.
Okay.
Yeah, so those are definitely great questions and good things to include, because ultimately, like I was saying before, the point of having your site is to drive new business. And so if you're sending new people to your or new people are coming into your website, you want to figure out how to capture their information, whether it be through IDX pages or your stealth site, whatever the case might be. So just then to kind of wrap things up, it's really important to be mindful of the SEO best practices that I've talked about. I'd say by far having quality content, original content on your site is probably one of the most important things from an SEO standpoint that you can do. it's just one of the best parts. With that in mind, your keyword research is definitely important. Being thoughtful of what people are going to be searching for, how they might search for it. This is another one of those great times to consider how you interact with your clients and what types of things they might say to you. You know, how are people in your local area describing the area, and how are people that are looking for homes talking about a particular area, and think about how you can target those types of themes that they've talked about and write content around that. As I just mentioned, be original with your content, and again, make sure you're writing for the real users. That's what the search engines are really looking for. As I mentioned, they're looking for the best experience for the searcher, trying to get them matched up with the most relevant content. So write for the users and make sure it's original content. You do want to make sure you're keeping the site architecture in mind, linking between your different pieces of content, your blog, whatever the case might be. Connect all those different pieces together so that you're kind of telling an entire story. And then, you know, even though I said the content's the most important piece, the on-page optimization is still very important. Its technical settings matter. Make sure that you include them, especially with your RealPro System site. A lot of those are, many of those settings are going to be kind of cued to you, so you know to put them in. But as far as some of those things like the image alt text, the bold text, things like that, when you're putting those into your actual content, make sure you're doing those types of things. And then again, just as we just talked about, the link building is a great way to take advantage of real relationships and just avoid schemes. If it sounds too good to be true, it probably is, and so just kind of stay away from it. And then make sure you're submitting your site to the search engines. It's free, it's relatively easy, and it's so important because it's the fastest way to make sure that they know what is on your site. And then with that, you know, I do want to let everyone know that as part of what we do here at RealPro Systems in our professional services department is providing optimized content packages. Basically, we do all the same things that I was just talking about. We'll generate locally focused community pages. We create Google Maps page that allows people to visualize the areas. We use professional content writers. We implement all the same SEO best practices that I just talked about, and we also include customized IDX searches so that people can be connected right to the content on their pages. So you know, we're not doing anything that is really outside of the scope of what I just talked about, but it's just something that if you feel like you don't have the ability or the time or whatever the case might be, it's something that we offer in case that you want some help. And so if you do, you can give us a call at 541-743-8510, or you can email us at contact@realprosystems.com. You know, it's just something that we provide if that's something you're looking for. And then before we get to the questions and answers, you know, I do want to just mention again that part of what we offer with the SEO settings is part of a complete system that exists here for you and your real estate business. And so we have a variety of components with our system that are here to maximize your SEO effectiveness. So there's a complete web marketing presence, which includes things like your main website, a mobile website. We have a social media connections, a blog system. As I mentioned, we have the integrated IDX Platinum system that works with it as well. We talked about the homes, the sell sites. Those are parts that we include as well. Automated CMA, showing feedback, and the video mail as well. And then on the back side of things, we have the back office with automated lead import, lead management tools, follow-up system, and video management as well. So it's a whole suite of tools that really work together to maximize your web presence and really streamline your ability to communicate with your leads and prospects and clients. So it's a really great tool. So if there's any interest in that as well, definitely contact our sales team. You can do that by calling 541-743-8510. They'd be happy to answer any questions you have or give you a complimentary consultation. Feel free to do it. It's a lot of great information about what Real Pro Systems is really able to provide for you. And with that, I do want to open up for questions and answers.
All right. Well, everybody, I have a couple of quick questions that I think will be good ones. The first question was, how do I know what keywords are converting? This may be kind of a Google Analytics question perhaps. I'm not quite sure.
That definitely comes into a little bit more of using an analytics platform. We have the VisiStat system that's tied into your Real Pro Systems site, as well as it's possible to integrate other analytics systems like Google Analytics is an example of a great free one. Sometimes on the SEO side of things, it's not always as easy to attribute where things are coming from, but you might say a visitor came in, as I mentioned before, it's often described as natural traffic, so that you might say, I know a person came in onto this particular page and then they signed up using this particular tool, and you can actually track their kind of their experience through the site, what page they came in on, and where they actually signed up as a lead or requested more information, whatever the case might be. As far as actually attributing that to a particular keyword, it's actually something that's become quite a bit more difficult. Even using tools like Google Analytics, Google has actually pulled back almost all of the keyword referral data that they provide. And so the way to really think about that is, what keywords are you targeting with your particular page? So if you know with your page you're focusing on Eugene real estate and they came from a Google search, it's most likely that they came from a search on Eugene real estate or one of your related theme keywords. But unfortunately, there's not a real clear way any longer to say that somebody came directly from a particular search query.
What about, Jordan, so what if, is there a way that a user could then maybe test their keywords, for example? I mean, would that, so if my site, I had something specific to Eugene lifestyle and real estate or something like that, and I were to type that in, would that be indicative of of how that keyword is performing based on where I'm at in the search?
Possibly. It's going to give you a little bit of an indicator of where you're showing up in the search results. If you're doing a particular search for your page or for your site, or rather you're doing a search for a keyword and looking for where your site comes through, it kind of gives you a feel for where you might show up. Definitely, if you're on the first page or the second page, it's more likely that people are clicking through from your to your site on terms like that. But it's not necessarily a perfect measurement, so it definitely gives you a little bit of an indicator. One thing that some people will do is actually use tools like Google AdWords and actually run some advertising campaigns around different keywords that they are interested in, because it actually gives you a little bit more feedback on what type of search traffic that you get from those different terms. So you would actually be paying for the traffic that comes through on a term like Eugene real estate, but you'd actually get a better measurement of how much volume, whether it's actual click-throughs on that ad or just the number of impressions that comes in on a search like that. So there are ways to kind of get around that, but it definitely kind of gets more into the paid advertising side of things.
Yeah, and that's a good segue into the next question, which was how does SEO, search engine optimization, vary from SEM, which is search engine marketing?
Sure.
Which is your paid performance.
Right, and yeah, so the search engine marketing oftentimes will include both, but the big difference is really paid versus not paid advertising. And like I said, oftentimes your search engine, or your SEO, while it doesn't have that direct cost tied to it, there are costs associated with it. The big difference is SEO is about getting your pages to show up in the natural results, the 10 that show up in the white section of Google. And then pay-per-click, or SEM, is really just that. You're going to pay for it, whether it's a cost-per-click basis, a cost-per-thousand type thing. There's definitely a cost associated there. Another one of the big differentiation points between the two is SEO is a bit of a long-term strategy because it has to do with the overall web presence that you built around your site. It takes into account a lot of different things. It can factor in your domain, how your URLs are structured, how often you're including new content on your site, all these different things that will play into their ranking factors, and it can take time. Sometimes it'll take several weeks or even a couple months for your pages to show up, and you don't have a strong way. You don't always have a strong way of influencing where you show up in the rankings, especially if there's a bigger player in your market, like Trulia or Zillow or something. The big difference there is that on the pay-per-click side of things is that it's an auction-type marketplace, and you can actually pay to play. And so if you really want to make sure you're driving traffic to your site for particular terms, you can actually bid up on those. You can pay different amounts of money for it. Real estate is a pretty competitive landscape as far as paid advertising goes, so it can sometimes get into the dollar per click, couple dollars per click type market. So it can get somewhat expensive pretty quickly, but it is a kind of a different strategy. It's more of an instantaneous strategy.
Okay. Well, I think the other questions that we have are kind of individual questions, so we'll definitely follow up on those. So if you had a question, and I will have mentioned that we'll follow up, and if not, feel free to give us a call. The number again, 541-743-8510. And I think with that, we conclude the webinar.
All right. Thanks, everyone, for attending, and we look forward to talking to you again sometime.
Thank you.